Around 75 crocodiles have escaped from a breeding farm in southern China during flooding caused by Typhoon Haikui, according to Chinese authorities.
중국 남부 지역에서 태풍 하이쿠이로 인해 쏟아진 폭우로 물이 차오르면서 농장에서 기르던 악어 약 75마리가 탈출했다고 당국이 발표했습니다. That's a lot of crocodiles.
That is, yeah, that's an understatement.
Exactly.
That is a lot of crocodiles. This happened in Guangdong province. This happened after a lake overflowed due to the typhoon.
Right.
Now they've said that a lot of them have been recaptured.
Some of them have been shot.
Some of them shot or even
Yeah.
electrocuted.
그래요. 이제 다시 붙잡힌 악어도 많이 있다고 하고요. 아직도 still on the loose 한 그런 이제 악어들도 있죠. 다 붙잡히지 않은. So yeah, people are on alert right now, as you can imagine.
Oh yeah, I think I would be if I heard there were
Yeah.
crocodiles roaming around.
그렇습니다. 자, 그러면 바로 표현으로 가볼게요. The crocodiles escaped.
If you escape, then you were held somewhere and then you got free. Usually, like a lot, it can be people. Like there was an
Yeah.
article in the States where someone escaped from prison. Those things can happen, or animals can escape. Even just like your dog can escape from the backyard.
Yeah, exactly.
Run
어디서
away.
탈출하다, 벗어나다, 뭐 탈옥하다까지도 지금 설명을 해주셨고요. 네, 그게 다 escape로 표현이 되는데 또 다른 예문이 있죠. Give us the example sentence.
For escape, close the door. My cat will try to escape. Everyone's had animals like that. As soon as you open the door, they're trying to get out.
문 닫어. 고양이가 탈출할지도 모르겠어. 이런 예문이네요. The next expression is breeding farm.
So breeding is where two animals make babies. Where animals make babies. So it's a farm where they do that. That's what they're doing. They're making more crocodiles.
Exactly.
You can also talk about a breeding ground. So breeding grounds are a little bit different. So in one sense, it's where animals breed in the wild, right? There's an area where animals will go and they'll often breed there, but that would be in the wild. Now, used a little bit more figuratively, a breeding ground is where something develops. We usually between people, groups of people. So a lot of times it can be unpleasant. So, we might talk about a breeding ground for extremism or a breeding ground for unrest, where in a certain region, because of maybe government policies, for example, that's where people start to gather and maybe try to rebel against the government, for example, take up arms.
그렇죠. 뭐 어떤 아이디올로지라든지 어떤 움직임이 확산이 되고 커지는 곳. 그것도 이제 breeding ground라고 비유적으로 쓸 수 있을 것 같고요. 여기서는 사육 농장, just literally a breeding ground.
Right, a place where this happens. But it doesn't always have to be negative. So sometimes they'll talk about certain cities or certain regions of a city as like a breeding ground for musicians or artists, because a lot of people came out of that area. Like in the 90s, Seattle, the city of Seattle was a breeding ground for grunge rock. Whereas like in the 80s, so many artists came out of New York City. And still, even today, New York City is always known as a breeding ground for musicians and artists. California, especially for the hip-hop scene in the 90s.
Right. 그러네요. 진짜 음악의 장르마다 특정 지역이 떠오르는 그런 장르들이 있는데 지금 캘리포니아는 힙합, 뉴욕은
All kinds of music and art. A lot of artists will congregate there.
So in that case, you would say, as you just mentioned earlier on, New York is a breeding ground for all sorts of music and musicians.
And artists.
이렇게 또 표현을 할 수 있겠습니다. One other thing I want to point out is pronunciation. So in Korea, a lot of people get the R sound and L sounds confused.
Sure.
Never confuse breeding with bleeding.
That's very different.
Very, very different.
Yes.
그래요. 발음만 그러면 한 번만 더 해주세요. Just give us the pronunciation of this word one more time, Ray.
Breeding. So a breeding farm is where animals will procreate, and then a breeding ground is in the wild. It's not a farm. Animals do the same thing, but also it's where things can grow and develop.
Absolutely. Okay, well, here it is one more time. Around 75 crocodiles have escaped from a breeding farm in southern China during flooding caused by Typhoon Haikui, according to Chinese authorities.